Producer admits sexual romps with teens, but denies abuse. By Stephen Buckley, July 26, 2000, for the Washington Post. Sergio Andrade is one part furious and one part perplexed. He listens calmly to the charges that he and his most famous client, the beautiful and charismatic Mexican pop star Gloria Trevi, raped, kidnapped, beat, spat on, manipulated, and otherwise degraded numerous teenage girl and young women who flocked around them. And he responds with bewildered indignation. He rolls his eyes. He sighs. For God's sakes, he says at one point. Yes, he had sex with some of these teenagers and women, he says. Sometimes he spoke harshly to them, nudged them to rehearse for a show, rather than watching TV or goof around. Yes, he went off to Rio de Janeiro in the middle of last year, but he swears that he had no idea that Mexican authorities had him on a wanted list. I'm not trying to make myself out to be a white dove, Andrade, 44, said this week, sitting in a small boxy interview room in a federal prison here in Brazil. I'm a man, but I'm not a monster. Minutes earlier, Trevi, dressed in a gray sweatsuit and wearing no makeup, her famously strawberry blonde hair splaying in all directions, had slid out of the room. It's not that I don't want to stay and listen, said Trevi, 30, but I know if I'm around, I'm just going to start crying. For now, Trevi's lawyers aren't letting her talk, but Andrade, Trevi's manager, has grown tired of listening. Tired of stories of how he and the singer used their mystique and power as one of Latin America's most well known manager artist teams to lure teens and young women into a circle of alleged physical deprivation, psychological abuse. One set of parents accused him of raping their teenage daughter and fathering her child. A son Andrade allegedly placed in an orphanage in Spain. His ex wife has said that he has total psychological dominance over people and alleges that he kidnapped and raped her. Another young woman, who called herself Delia Gonzalez, said last year in a television interview that Andrade raped me for 9 months. He would get mad and spit on me. He would strap me. He would lock me in a room. And there is more, including allegations that he manipulated and abused Trevi, now a fallen feminist heroine, the way he allegedly did all the others. Of course not, he says with a pause and a sigh. Andrade insists that he has never heard of some of his accusers, such as Gonzalez, such as Delia Gonzalez. But the problem, he admits, is that there is at least a stitch of truth to a lot of the other allegations. How much truth? No one yet knows. The Mexican government hopes to find out by bringing out the couple back to their homeland and putting them on trial. But the Brazilian courts are not likely to make an extradition ruling for months, leaving Trevi and Andrade to stew in prison, where, he says, he has stared for hours at the ceiling at night, asking, how the hell did all this happen? A good question from one of Mexico's legendary record producers, the man who vaulted Trevi to her status as a working class, feminist icon whose first big hit, Doctor Psiquiatra, featured bottles being smashed against the wall and lyrics that chastised the doctor for gazing at his teenage patient's shapely legs. She became one of Latin America's most popular singers, known for her blistering onstage energy and antics, her rage, sexy get-ups, her good works, and her good looks. Andrade had met Trevi in 1984, when she was 14. At first, he turned her away. Over the next 3 or 4 months, she called or visited him 3 or 4 times, needling and wheedling him for an opportunity. Eventually, after Doctor Psiquiatra and her first album came out in 1989, she became an industry unto herself, posing for posters and making movies. Her racy calendars sold more than 1 million copies. Her 3 albums sold more than 5 million. There had even been talk for a Gloria Trevi doll. Throughout the years, according to their accusers, Andrade and Trevi drew many teenage girls and young women into their circle. Some were groupies. Another hungered for Andrade to make them a star, like Trevi. Andrade's accusers says he and Trevi took advantage of their vulnerability. They say he sometimes denied them from food and kept them from calling or visiting their parents. Andrade says that at times he indeed made girls turn off the television or keep them from going home to visit their parents, who had give him or American Connections, the entertainment production company he was connected with, written permission to work with the girls. Sure, there were times when I would tell them, "Hey, we got a show coming up. Stop goofing off," he says, adding later. Or I would say they couldn't go visit their parents this Saturday because we had a show. Is that what they mean by controlling? Andrade, a quietly charming man with sad brown eyes and black hair spiked with gray, does not deny having had sex with some of his accusers. He says that at various times, he and Trevi have themselves been lovers. He also suggests that he has had an array of sexual relationships with groupies and prospects, some of whom were still teenagers when he became physically intimate with them. The parents of the girls whose child they accuse Andrade of fathering suggest that he tried to hide the baby in an orphanage in Spain, where Andrade, Trevi, and members of her group, Little Painted Mouths, lived for a few months in 1997. Andrade says he did have a sexual relationship with the teenager from the middle of 1998 till the end of last year. It was never with violence. It was never me using my authority, he says. It was a friendship. He seems genuinely puzzled by some of the accusations. He said that when he and Aline Hernandez, his ex-wife, divorced in the early 1990s, she offered she offered no sordid accusation in court. He had met Hernandez when she was 14. They married when she was 16. They divorced when she was 19. She didn't say anything about rape, he says. Nothing. Nothing. She just said she wanted a divorce. She didn't say anything about abuse. And then there is Delia Gonzalez, who said that Andrade forced her to make a pornographic film during a trip to San Diego in the 1990s. First of all, I've never even spent a night in San Diego, he said, adding that Trevi did a show there once, but they then left town immediately. And I don't recognize this woman's name. I never met a person with that name, and I don't know her. I never. There's no way. He arrived in Rio de Janeiro for the first time last July, then came and went for the next 7 months. After he and Trevi were arrested in January, along with 3 members of Painted Little Mouths, residents who lived in their apartment building near Copacabana Beach, said they had kept a low profile. According to the authorities, they have moved to several apartments in Rio's affluent South Zone last year. Trevi, however, did manage to regularly have her hair done at the Ritzy Salon, a few blocks from her apartment. Her regular hairdresser would say that she had some of the most beautiful locks he'd ever seen. Trevi told him she had come to Brazil to do concerts and perhaps record an album. Andrade says that the Andrade says that he never turned himself over to Mexican authorities for questioning because he did not know they were looking for him. It was not until last November, when he saw a brief magazine article about the allegations, that he realized that he and Trevi might be in trouble. 3 months ago, a Brazilian federal court delayed a decision on extradition. Saying it wanted the Mexican government to show more evidence of a case against Andrade and Trevi. The court is still waiting for those documents and is not expected to rule the matter for at least another couple of months. Andrade says that enemies of his in the media are responsible for all of this and alleges that his accusers are now writing books and giving interviews for pay, eager to cash in on his hard times. It's become an industry, he says with a tired shrug.